There's a perfectly logical explanation for all this.
In the wake of 1977's Star Wars and its 1980s sequel, The Empire Strikes Back, almost every Hollywood studio was clambering to make a Star Wars rip-off. Of course, they varied wildly in quality, but in amongst the dross are some great films. The Last Starfighter gets a lot of love, but the film I'm going to talk about came out a year before it, and doesn't get the praise it deserves.
He's 10 years old, and they've taken him 10 million miles into space. Not happy about this. Not happy.
That's a fine premise for a science fiction film.
Space Raiders, which is sometimes known as Star Child, is a Roger Corman production written and directed by Howard R. Cohen, released in 1983, and is about a 10-year-old boy called Peter who accidentally stows away on a ship populated with space pirates, and they try and return him to his father while being chased by the galactic police.
Security breach!
When I saw this movie as a child, a little bit younger than the main character, I had no idea how cheap it was. Look at this opening scene. It's clearly shot in a warehouse full of building materials, but there are just enough spacey things around to convince a child that this warehouse full of building materials is on another planet. Honestly, to unsophisticated me at that time, this looked no different from Star Wars.
Will you take me home now?
The plot is a fairly loose retelling of Treasure Island, with Peter filling in for the Jim Hawkins role and the Han Solo wannabe Hawk being the space-age Long John Silver.
You're losing your touch. Robots. I can't sense robots.
Roger Corman had sold New World Pictures at the beginning of 1983 for just under 17 million USD, which is over 55 million adjusted for inflation. He announced that this new company, Millennium, would make films for 2 to 5 million, huge figures compared to what he was used to, and they would be less commercial. Space Raiders was one of the first films Millennium produced.
When you read that a picture cost $35 million to make, what do you think of that cost?
Actually, I think it's wrong. I think the artist should be able to express himself for less money than that, and the businessman should be able to invest his money better. I think from both an artistic and a commercial standpoint, it is wrong to spend that much money. And in addition, I think there are better things to do with the money in our society.
For example?
You could, for $30 million or $40 million, which is what some of these films are costing, you could rebuild a portion of the slums of a city, just as one example.
So you think it's obscene to spend that much money?
Yes, I would use that word.
So how did Roger Corman keep the budget so low on a space adventure movie? Well, recycling. You see, a lot of the special effects in Space Raiders were seen before in Battle Beyond the Stars. Most of these spaceships have appeared in about 8 Roger Corman produced movies. Large sections of James Horner's music were taken from Battle Beyond the Stars too, as well as humanoids from the deep, with Murphy Dunn from the Blues Brothers' Murph and the Magic Tones being credited for songs.
You're marvelous, thank you. I'm Murph, and these are the Magic Tones.
Seeing how much is repurposed from Battle Beyond the Stars, it's quite surprising how boring that film is compared to Space Raiders. Possibly because the latter is aimed at a younger audience, it moves at such a lick that there is no time for it to outstay its welcome. 85 minutes and it's over. Even the hosts of Red Letter Media, who picked the film to be watched on their Best of the Worst show, had to concede it's jolly good fun.
If you're making a low-budget rip-off movie, they did an A-plus job of making a low-budget rip-off movie, almost to where it barely crossed the line into its own thing, but just fell short.
Almost a real movie, which is high praise on Best of the Worst.
Almost its own thing? There is no denying that it is made for the Star Wars fanbase. In fact, it was released only a couple of months after Return of the Jedi to make most of the craze. And maybe if Star Wars never existed, then Space Raiders wouldn't either. But does that make it a rip-off? There are no Jedi forces or Chosen One narrative. In terms of characters, I think they've got more in common with the original Star Trek. I think if you were to go into this film expecting it to be another Star Wars, you would leave disappointed. I see it as just a fun caper set in space.
Wow, it's just like Star Wars!
Roger Corman reused the Space Raiders footage in a film called Andy Colby's Incredible Adventure. which is also called Andy and the Airwave Rangers, or Andy Colby's Incredible Video Adventure, or Andy Colby's Incredibly Awesome Adventure, or in German it's called Fantastic Adventure, fantastic spelled with a PH. It is a very low effort film where the hero's sister is sucked into the TV and Andy has to go in after her to come to her rescue, and it reuses a lot of footage from Roger Corman films, like its switching channels. And with the aid of some new cutaways and some incredibly poor chroma key, even for the time, it kinda makes it seem like Randy Jocelyn was in those films.
Well, at least he didn't die for nothing. We got the ship. The ship's empty.
Not quite empty.
Hi. I'm trying to find my sister.
For my taste, the Andy Colby movie, whatever title you want to use, has relatively little entertainment value. Unless you enjoy watching the filmmakers crowbarring close-ups of the lead actor into scenes in which he cannot interact.
Leave that alone, kid.
Space Raiders is pure nostalgia for me. The practical effects have, for the most part, aged well. The story has a few things in it that a modern telling probably wouldn't, like an alien prostitute, but then that's the 80s for you. I'm very pleased to say that the film is currently in full in HD on YouTube, as is Battle Beyond the Stars and Last Starfighter. I'll let your conscience decide if you would rather pay for them or not. And speaking of payment, if you would like to help me pay for the making of these videos, you can send me the price of a cup of coffee via this site. And be sure to leave me a comment below if you've enjoyed this movie. It'd be nice to meet some like-minded people. I'm Scott Kingsnorth, and I'm making a movie.